Hello, how's it going? Yesterday I was going to talk about video games um, and just the effect they have and how they affect me and how I viewed them in recent times and stuff like that. Where, like, a lot of games, a lot of just gaming in general, it just feels a little bit like a little more sad, I guess. Just things don't feel as fun as they used to, or like a lot of, not necessarily because games are bad or old games are better, but mostly because of like general, like, attitude towards games is just different now. There's a lot of like negative stuff going on with companies, having like terrible development cycles, uh, shutting down like big known like groups or studios. Um, even the AI thing, where like, a lot of like artists, uh, they choose like not to hire a lot of like artists because they can just get somebody else to like draft a loading screen or a program. And it's not even just that too, though, where like now they're trying to get AI voices for people instead of just like hiring a voice actor. And I don't know, just a lot of stuff to cut corners and make games feel like less alive, I guess. You know what I mean? You know, I guess when you hear like a monotone voice and it's like, hey, yeah, I did that. It's like, okay, cool, but then you can like kind of tell when somebody puts their all in that, and it's, I don't know, it sucks to lose that creativeness in some games. Um, Even then, though, it's not even just the AI stuff. Though a lot of companies get shut down and they don't really go through like good processes. I think one of the saddest things I remember was like with Plants vs Zombies. It was like kind of a series I really liked growing up, and then um, a lot of those, the whole entire game studio that originally created the first two Plants vs Zombies, they left. None of those people still exist, or like not many at all. It's probably like maybe one or two to five people that still exist from that original team, and it sucks how to hear that many of them just didn't like how the game was going and things weren't really turning well. And, as the companies, had their merger and everything, and yeah, it's kind of sad to see like a group of people that put their time into a game and then really had love for it, and as the next one comes, it's kind of like not a bit, I guess, like corporate, I guess is the best way to put it, where they, you gotta put monetization here, this, that, and it's a lot of like small stuff to make as much money as possible. And it's just it's interesting, like where there seems to be there seems to be like a really high need for money to make games and to like continue to like support them and everything, but there never seems to be a lot of money going into them. And it's interesting, But let's say, okay, what's like a popular game? All right, let's say Call of Duty Black Ops. You look up the sales for that, and it's 500 million, 500 million sales for that game. And then, so 500 million times like 70, how many, like, think about that. How much is that? That's like $35 billion right there into a game. And it's like, where does that money go? What are we really spending it on? Is, and counting like that's not counting like the sales they get from like battle passes and stuff like that. You know, that's from just people buying the game. And it really makes you wonder like where do these funds go, you know? Are they advertising? Are they doing this, that? You know, I know COD is something that does advertise, but like really like I don't know, like there's always like some issue where people aren't getting paid, or they don't want to hire voice actors, or they want to do this to cut corners. And it's just, man, like, why are games so expensive? Yet a lot of this money doesn't, it feels like it doesn't go into the game. And it makes you wonder, you know, 'cause there is a lot of stuff like that where I think it was recently with not recently, but you know, a few months back, it was like the whole thing with Bungie, and the president was just using the funds to just go live his life and buy cars or something like that. You know, and is that like what most of these CEOs do? Are they just enjoying life and just taking advantage of like people that buy games and make games? Like I don't know. Like what is it? Maybe it's not even the CEO, but it's like someone in between that chain of just like higher ups is taking a little more than the rest. Or maybe it's like, you know, as it goes up, somebody takes a little more than the last person. Um, and yeah, it just makes you wonder, like, what are we putting that to? I understand that like maybe there's like company funds and stuff like that too. You know, not all of it just goes into the game. You know, if this is a game studio, they probably have multiple studios they have to pay, stuff like that, this, that, and but that's what I mean. Like, I feel like you should just. I feel like there's a general thing like where maybe they have too much, but they're not doing enough to sustain that much. So that's why there's always like a feeling of like having no money in the games, I guess. You know, maybe they're hiring too much there, and so instead of like toning it down and saying like we need to push 3 games a year, you know, maybe they should give games more time, you know. People probably wouldn't be like overstimulated by just the same things coming out, and then it probably wouldn't be a lot of like, you know, issues with funds because you're not trying to do like 3 different projects by the end of like the next 3 years or something like that. And then by that time, they already have another team working on something. So it's I don't know. I don't know like what it is where like it's so bad like that. But it's interesting that like something like Nintendo can do that still, where they do have a lot of teams doing things, but it's but you know, even though they're like a console exclusive like type of thing, it kind of makes their games more valued, I guess, in terms of sales and things like that, because not a lot of people can just buy these everywhere. Not a lot of people. You have to get a Nintendo console, and then you have to buy the Nintendo game, and you know a lot of that money just goes into just Nintendo projects, and then They have enough funds now where they can go and they have Nintendo Land because somebody was like, "Oh man, we would love to do this and work with you." So then they get that profit from there. They get their profit from Pokemon and stuff like that. Where I think, yeah, maybe it is just like maybe Nintendo just lucked out so much with their general IPs, where Mario and Pokemon and stuff like that, they're all still so popular, even today, and so it they just they have a sustainable like way of like continuing as a company compared to like something like you know not Treyarch, because I think they're perfectly fine. I think in that sense there's something going on there. But I feel like there's something going on in the terms of Treyarch. Why aren't you trying to hire voice actors? Why aren't you trying to hire artists? Why are you like? Why does a company like that needs to cut out so many funds? You got 5 million people buying your game, and on top of that, you know, maybe not 5 million people, but a good amount are buying cosmetics, season passes, uh, battle passes, stuff like that. Where that's like 20, 30, 40, 50, just going into the game. It's very rare. I go in COD and then I see somebody with like a default skin or anything like that. Same with like Fortnite. Fortnite's a free game, but they get most of their money from like the skin packs that people buy or whatever. Uh, like $20 would go into here, $20 going in there, 20, stuff like that. Where it was like, wow, man, where does this money's going somewhere? And that makes me think like, oh, why did they stop making Little Big Planet? What made them just stop at 3 and do a different team? Did they really, like, the original team really not want to do that anymore? And if so, uh, I do recall though. I think they said they wanted to do something else other than Little Big Planet, but I feel like Little Big Planet was something they made a lot of money on. I remember being a kid and buying a lot of skins in that game. I probably spent like over 200 or something, maybe just buying stuff across all three games. Um, I didn't buy it often, but you play a game for so long for like two different console generations, and going into the third, it's like, oh man, oh, how much did I really spend? I think like less over time. I stopped buying like costumes, but I did buy like the level packs, and so it was more like, man, what happened? Do kids just not care about this game now, or what? I don't know. That might come to just advertisement. People didn't really like. That was kind of like if you played the first two, you played the third one. But growing up, I really don't remember like advertisement being there for games like Little Big Planet. I always see advertisement for the next COD and the next, Bungie expansion or Destiny expansion or something like that. But I never see it for something like that where it's like Little Big Planet or something back in the day that isn't like a Nintendo game. Yeah, I do remember I used to see that a lot. Like Spectrobes. If you know what that is, that was like a DS game on that was popular in the 2000s earlier. Uh, and I remember playing that as a kid as well, and then being like, "Wow, I really like this game." But I grew up a long time not knowing there was a second one, and then when I found out later on, I'm like, "There's a whole third one," and I think, but maybe that was only Japanese exclusive. I don't remember. I don't think it was though. I think they both came out in uh, overseas, and it was just it's interesting. You didn't really like see stuff like that. Maybe that's because cable didn't really, or TVs didn't really advertise like that. But yeah, I don't know. Even now, though, I feel like it's even worse now. Like, I don't really see advertisement for games. I feel like if you just know about a game, you just know about a game, and you learn through hype. But it's like, how do the kids learn about games? You know, how do kids know about that? Is it just because somebody they know is into a game, and then they tell them about the game? Like, I don't really see advertisement for games. I see it for mobile games, like Master Duel, Yu-Gi-Oh, and the Pokemon like card game, stuff like that. I see, or some random anime game that people spend a lot of, those things get a lot of money, but I never see it for a video game. It's really rare I see it for a game where there's just general advertisement for it, and usually that only happens like the coming like month it's about to come out, if it does. Now that I like really think about it, I did not see advertisement for Elden Ring like that. Maybe there was, but I never saw it. uh Devil May Cry, I didn't really see advertisement for that. I did for Sparking Zero though, and that was interesting. But that's, I guess that's because it's Dragon Ball. But Sparking Zero, I did. I saw a billboard for that, somewhere, and then I saw a lot of trailers for that. But other games, like I didn't really see that for. And I don't know. It's just interesting. Does advertisement really help games? I really would like to like learn that and know personally how well that like statistically, how much does advertisement help a game? Does just throwing out a trailer on some big event do more for them? And it's like, okay, you build up the hype and stuff like that, and it's just, it just makes you wonder where everything's going. And I don't know. I really like playing games still. I enjoy them and I have fun. Um, I do actually. You know what? Sorry. Before I get into my whole thing about how games are different and they feel sad, but I do see advertisement on social media. I think that's most of it, but a lot more of it is from people talking about something. Um, you know, I will see advertisement on like Twitter or Instagram, and it'll be like a game, and that game will be like a game will be uh something like it'll be like a Dragon Ball MOBA. A MOBA is games like League and things like that, but I'll see that game and then I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. I didn't know they were making that. But the first time I learned about that game, it was just like it was when somebody else was talking about it, and they were talking about the models of the game, and they're like, "Well, these look not that bad," or something like that. Um, which is funny because it was somebody praising it, but for not looking terrible, that I even checked out what the game was. I was like, "What is this? I didn't even know this was coming out." Um, and then I played the game and I actually really like it, you know. But I wouldn't have known about that if I wasn't on social media, probably. Uh, my friend, that I played with probably wouldn't have known about that if I never told him about it. And then we played like the beta, and he likes the game just as me. So it's like, man, there's just a lot out there that like people don't know about and people don't hear, and they wonder what it is. It's really like rare that I see a game and I from other people not talking about them, or if it's like a Nintendo Direct or a State of Play. And and I wonder, like, do companies pay to have their like slots in there? And they're like, hell yeah, we're partnered with you, or so you can get in, but you're not partnered with us, but you paid us, so you can also get in. And I just really wonder how like a lot of that goes into the stuff and how much is put into that funds wise and things like that. But sorry, I'm yawning again. But yeah, just it sucks. I feel like a lot of games aren't widely known. Like, how is a 8 to 10 year old kid supposed to learn about that without being on social media? And I wouldn't really say being on social media is the best for a kid that's like that young, but you know, it happens. Um, yeah, like how is a kid supposed to learn about that? How are they supposed to get into more games and this and that? I really like, thinking about it from before when I was growing up. My little brother like played a lot of games, but he didn't know how to find more games. Um, so for a long time, he spent a long time like playing the same like few games, but he never knew what other games to get. Um, so and I think the only time he ever got a new game was like if I told him about it. I was like, "Oh yeah, you might like this game," and then he checks it out, or maybe some friend told him about it. But he never was like on social media like that as like a 13-year-old. So he never really like learned about games, what games were there and what games were out there. Uh, so it's really interesting. Uh, it feels kind of hard to get in games, really, because you really have to go out there and look for something. And a lot of the times you might find something that's really cool or really fulfills like a nostalgic feeling for you when you play it, but it's not a lot of times it's in early access. It's not even finished. And sometimes they don't even ever get finished. And it really feels sad to like invest something like that you really liked and then it doesn't even really get finished, or the launch, or it does get finished and it completely goes a whole different way, and then you don't really enjoy what the game became. Oh, or you've been waiting for so long for the game to come out, and your hype for it has gone away because you probably like played it too much in early access, and then you're like, oh well, I basically 100% it now. Every time there was an update, so about time the full game came, and it was like whatever little content there was, they added finally. To you, it feels like that took like ages for that to happen, and it didn't really like do too much. Uh, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that happens, and I do think though that like I do think that games are still fun. I do like to play them. Um, I enjoy a lot of things like TFT and a lot of roguelikes still. Uh, I'm excited for newer games of series I loved and stuff like that. But it's hard to go out of your comfort zone for a game and then be, because you don't know where to go and there's so much places to go, and so it does. I can see how that feels stale. I can see how maybe you were a new gamer and during the COVID, stage, and you really got into games for the first time, and you're like, wow, I really love this. But then, like, now, a few years from then, it's really gone like stale on you because you kind of started. You were just playing the same games again, and they weren't really like. Maybe you got into like AAA games, like really big things like The Last of Us, or like COD, or maybe some big story games like not Forspoken, but like Final Fantasy 16 and stuff like that. And it really, sorry, I'm like having a little issues thinking about triple A games, but maybe that shows how much I play them. But yeah, you played a lot of games, but now a lot of them feel like not too great and haven't been doing too great. So it's like, oh, what do I play now? And yeah, that's kind of it, really. Like, it just sucks, not to know where to go and what to do. Um, I really liked playing the game. I still do, but I do view it very differently. Especially, I view it very differently, especially in recent times, because a lot of times I wouldn't really even enjoy what I'm playing. I'm not really excited or happy about it. I'm just kind of just doing it just because that's kind of like how I got through my day. That's kind of how my default was, where I was depressed and I didn't know what to do, so I would just play the game because it helped me feel like I was doing something at least. Or I think there comes like a point where like I was somewhat addicted, not in the sense of like I have to play, I'm itching to play, I really want to play. Where I'm addicted in the sense that I use it for a way to cope, and I use it as a way to progress, my days and my feelings, or to ignore my feelings. I don't really think when I play the game. I just get on the game and then I'm like, all right, well, I played the game. That was something for my day. And there would become points where I would play the game and it's been like 8 hours later and I really haven't done anything all day. I could have had like schoolwork or something I needed to do, and I just didn't do anything. Or I would have, some real life obligation and I didn't do anything. Or I was really depressed about something, and where I got in a fight with my partner, instead of like really thinking about what I'm going through, I would just play the game and then sit there and be upset. And then I would come the next day and I would say something completely else, and it just, or something like worse than how I was feeling, and it related to how I was feeling, and then we get in a fight, because I'd feel like bad about myself or something. I don't know. And I didn't really process those feelings, and try to really think, is this what I feel? And, uh, why am I caring so much about something? Just, I don't know, small stuff where instead of progressing and growing myself, I went to play the game, and I did something that was easy for me. A long time ago, uh, maybe like about it might have been 2 years ago, not a long time ago, but like about 2 or 3 years ago, I remember watching this video about a guy talking about video games and how they can be addicting to you, and they really take away from your life, and they really make you not focus on things and stuff like that. I remember watching that video and I was like, I get it, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm not addicted. I don't do any of these things. I just like playing the game. But when I did play the game, I didn't really care too much. I kind of just did it just to do it. And that was like where I was like, that was like where, I just did it to do it. I said that like 30 times. Jesus. But yeah, it's really like, now that I look at it, it's been like 2 years later, and I was addicted in a way. Again, not like to it for that itch, and I was like, oh, I can't really focus on things. I need to play the game. It was like I didn't want to focus on things. I didn't want to care about things. I didn't care about myself, but I didn't care about my life, and so I played the game to feel like I was doing something. Uh, I was in a really bad situation with my mom, and I really wanted to leave and stuff like that, but I never did, and I never really like. I don't think could have helped, or I don't think I helped as much as I could have. I could have supported her, and I could have went out and be like, oh yeah, let's watch a movie. Oh yeah, let's go hang out and let's do this. Uh, and yeah, so I don't think in those, sometimes where I could have just got off the game and did something. Uh, Instead, I was sad and I was bitter, or I just didn't feel like doing anything, or didn't feel like anything. I would play the game, and I kind of and I didn't do anything. And I think people should really like look out for that. They should really look to see if you know, are they really progressing in the way they want it to? Are they finding things they want to like and they continue to do, and so on and so on. So I think it's a little rough uh, to notice when you're addicted to something. I think it can happen for anything. Um, I think one of the biggest ones is like social media addiction, where people get, apparently it's like the same effect as like taking drugs or getting like happy responses or something like that. Like getting like high levels of dopamine, because they give the same signals as like when you get a like or a follow. You're like, oh my god, and you get addicted to that feeling, and it becomes a point where you care about that more than your life and your relationships and in person and stuff like that. Uh, or you just get addicted to drugs, and you find yourself spending more money, or gambling too, and saying you spend more money on something you shouldn't, and And when people try to help you, you might push them away, or you kind of like betray their trust because you try, but then you get through like a moment where you're like, I really need to. And I think there's levels to it where maybe it's easier to get off certain things, where like drugs are, they all chemically mess your brain up in some way, but like drugs are comparative. Same with alcohol, they like mess with your brain in a sense of like, you know, the chemicals do it versus like an addiction towards like a concept of like gaming and gambling and stuff like that, social media and everything. That comes more from like a mental thing, and it could be helped, but you know, uh, but it's not. I think all of them require you to really think about that. I think you need to like take some time back and figure out, am I doing well with myself, and how can I get well? And then you realize what you're sinking your time into, what you're doing and what you're playing, and what are you doing every day? Is it really productive, or is this just is this just something I do just to do it? Or because it's fulfills like a satisfaction in my brain that a lot of other things don't right now. Or maybe they do, but they're hard to like realize that. And I think it takes work, and it takes the ability to understand that like you might be doing something a little wrong, not in the sense of like what you're doing is bad, and it's fun to indulge in things and like things and do things you like. But there comes points where you're like, maybe I am doing that too much. Maybe I'm not really all there like I want to be. And you kind of have to just realize that, really take the time to sit down and say, didn't I want to do something else today? Didn't I kind of want to get ahead in my schoolwork? Didn't I want to try this hobby or get into this? For a long time I've been talking about doing this. Then I didn't, because I chose to stick to this thing all day instead. You can function and you can go to work all day. You can like maybe go to school, still go to class, but then you can come home and then you kind of do the bare minimum, and then there you go. And then that'll create moments in your life where you're stressed out now because you're like, oh, I had to do this, I had to do that, I had to really buckle down, and this, like it's just, and you come back and you create kind of like a feedback loop where you're like, oh, I'm stressed from all this stuff I had to do, all this really bothered me. I'm gonna go play the game now. I really want to go play the game now, just to like relax and wind down. And you do that, but then the stuff builds up again, and you kind of create a loop of like bad thoughts or bad behaviors, and you really have to really have to try to like, acknowledge that. I think the first thing is acknowledging it, and once you do that, you go from there. You're like, okay, what do I want to do? You say, I want to quit this. Then you start taking steps to quit this. Maybe you don't want to quit this, but you don't want to do it as much. So you limit it. You say, okay, I'm going to look at my phone for like maybe 2 hours maximum or something like that. And then you look at your phone or you look at social media for like 2 hours, and then there you go. Or you say like, I only want to spend 5 hours a week, a day. So you set your like things where you're like, okay, how do you like a tracker or something like that. And you set and there's a lot of like things that do that. Like I believe Instagram does that, where you can like set like a time or something, or like say like, oh, this is how many hours you spent. Are you trying to spend, just to give you that notification? And you're like, oh, okay, I need to come back. Just having that reminder, reminding yourself and getting there. If you say like, I only want to use my phone in regards to social media like 3 times a week versus getting on every day, every morning, every afternoon, every hour, this onwards, you don't really focus on your relationship, or you don't really focus on your friendships, or you don't really focus on your family, or you don't really focus on your, your schoolwork, or this and that and that, I'm just saying that in spirits for me, like stuff I noticed that I did, I would look at social media and I would get sad, or I would play the game all day, and then I would be sad that I'm like up all night, so then I just do nothing and then play the game because I'm awake in the middle of the night while everybody else is sleeping, and so it's a lot of it is really trying to get there and be healthy about what place you're in, and I think that it just takes work, you gotta really believe, you gotta really remind yourself, and you gotta really like try, acknowledge where you're at and what things you want to do and what things you want to cut back from, how you want to be, and you gotta just believe you can get there. I guess I'll say that's pretty much it for this video. I don't really have too much going on, I guess, or in the brain left on this topic. There are some things, but I think that they're more like retreading. So as usual, tell me, how's your day going? How are you feeling? What's been going on? What have you been thinking about? Feel free to talk to me on my socials or whatever. And have a good day, night, and whatever. A solar eclipse. Enjoy your life, enjoy yourself, and keep trying to be happy. Bye.